Document. Part 6. The next morning, the Valeth Council convened aboard their massive spacecraft. The chamber was dimly lit, with walls that shimmered like liquid metal and a central platform where holographic projections of Earth rotated slowly. Keller stood at the forefront, his tall, slender frame radiating authority as he addressed the gathered members. Neera sat quietly in the back, her hands clasped tightly around the portable drive containing the evidence she hoped would change their minds. Keller began by presenting his findings, his melodic voice echoing through the room. He displayed images of Earth's wildlife snakes coiled to strike, bees armed with stingers, and jellyfish trailing deadly tentacles. Each creature was surrounded by glowing outlines and labeled with symbols indicating danger. These organisms are biological weapons, Keller declared. Their traits pose a significant risk to galactic stability. If left unchecked, they could spread beyond this planet and threaten countless civilizations. He then showed footage of humanity's destructive actions, factories belching smoke into the air, rivers choked with waste, and forests reduced to barren wastelands. This species lacks discipline, he continued. They exploit their environment without regard for balance or consequence. Their behavior suggests an inability to coexist peacefully, even among themselves. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Some nodded in agreement, while others remained silent, absorbing the information. Keller concluded by recommending immediate quarantine Medusa decision that would isolate Earth from the rest of the galaxy until its inhabitants proved capable of responsible stewardship. As Keller stepped back, Neera felt her heart pounding. This was her moment to speak, though she knew challenging Keller's authority would not be easy. Taking a deep breath, she rose from her seat and approached the central platform. "Honored Council," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I respect Keller's analysis, but I believe there is more to consider. Yes, Earth's creatures possess traits we might view as dangerous, but those same traits also contribute to the planet's intricate balance. Without predators, prey populations would spiral out of control. Without pollinators, ecosystems would collapse. These organisms are not weapons. They are threads in a delicate web." She inserted the portable drive into the console. New holograms appeared, scenes of humans planting trees, rescuing injured animals, and cleaning polluted beaches. "And what of humanity itself?" Neera continued. "While it is true they have caused harm, they are also capable of incredible acts of restoration. In recent weeks, millions have come together under the Earth Accord, pledging to protect their world. They are trying to change not because they fear us, but because they care about their future." Keller frowned deeply, stepping forward to challenge her. "Change takes time, Neera. Time we cannot afford to waste. What assurance do we have that these efforts will succeed?" Neera met his gaze without flinching. "You must give them that time. To act prematurely would deny them the chance to prove themselves. Isolation will only breed resentment and possibly rebellion. By working with them, we can guide their evolution toward harmony." The council chamber fell silent as the members deliberated. Neera returned to her seat, her hands trembling slightly. She had said all she could. Now, the decision rested in their hands. Far below, on Earth, Jack and Laura were unaware of the debate taking place high above the atmosphere. Instead, they focused on rallying support for the Earth Accord. News of the aliens' potential judgment had spread rapidly, sparking both fear and determination among the global population. Protests erupted in major cities, with thousands chanting slogans like "Save Our Planet" and "Prove We're Worth It." Social media buzzed with hashtags calling for unity and action. Laura found herself overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the movement. Every day she received messages from people asking how they could help, from school children eager to start recycling programs to business owners seeking advice on sustainable practices. While the outpouring of support was heartening, it also highlighted the enormity of the task ahead. Could humanity truly transform itself in time to satisfy the aliens' expectations? Jack, meanwhile, dealt with growing unrest in Montana. Local communities were divided over how to respond to the alien presence. Some argued for military intervention, was convinced that force was the only way to protect Earth. Others advocated for peaceful negotiation, believing that aggression would only escalate tensions. As a park ranger, Jack tried to remain neutral, focusing instead on documenting changes in the wildlife, and even he couldn't ignore the mounting anxiety gripping those around him. One evening, as they sat together in Laura's apartment, exhaustion etched onto their faces, Sam arrived with fresh updates. "Things are heating up," he said, setting down a stack of printed articles. "Governments are starting to take sides. Some want to cooperate with the aliens, while others are pushing for defensive measures." Laura groaned, rubbing her temples. "This is exactly what we didn't want, a fractured response. If we can't present a united front, the aliens won't see us as trustworthy." Sam nodded grimly. "There's more. A group calling themselves the Guardians of Humanity has been gaining traction online. They're spreading conspiracy theories about the aliens wanting to enslave us or steal our resources. It's nonsense, but it's catching on." Jack clenched his fists, frustration bubbling inside him. "We need to counteract that narrative. People are scared, and fear makes them irrational. If we don't address these lies, they'll undermine everything we've worked for. We have to show them the truth," Laura said firmly, "not just about the aliens, but about ourselves. We're stronger when we work together. That's the message we need to spread." Sam pulled out his laptop and opened a blank document. "All right, let's get to work. We'll write an open letter addressing the rumors head-on. Something clear, concise, and hopeful, something that reminds people why we're fighting for this planet." For hours, they collaborated, crafting a statement that acknowledged humanity's flaws while celebrating its capacity for growth and redemption. When they finished, Sam posted it online, tagging influential figures and organizations aligned. With the Earth Accord, within minutes, the letter went viral, shared across platforms, and translated into dozens of languages. Back aboard the Valith ship, the council reached its decision. After hours of deliberation, they agreed to postpone any drastic measures, at least for now. Instead, they authorized a trial period during which humanity would be monitored closely. If significant progress was made within a set time frame, further communication and collaboration would be considered. However, failure to demonstrate meaningful change would result in immediate quarantine. Keller accepted the ruling reluctantly, though his expression betrayed lingering skepticism. Naira, on the other hand, allowed herself a small smile. Her gamble had paid off for now to facilitate the trial period. The council dispatched a delegation of Valith scientists to establish limited contact with human representatives. Among them was Naira, who volunteered eagerly. She believed that direct interaction would foster understanding between the two species, bridging the gap created by fear and misunderstanding. Days later, Jack and Laura received an unexpected visitor. As they walked along the edge of Glacier National Park, discussing strategies for engaging local communities, a familiar hum filled the air. Turning toward the sound, they saw one of the metallic drones descending gracefully before them. Unlike previous encounters, this drone projected a hologram not of warning signs, but of a humanoid figure extending an open-handed gesture of peace. Beneath the image floated a message, written in simple English, *, "We wish to speak, * Laura's eyes widened in disbelief. "They're reaching out," she whispered. "They want to talk." Jack nodded, his pulse racing. "Let's go. Whatever happens next, we're ready." Together, they followed the drone as it led them deeper into the forest, where a sleek, silver craft awaited. Its surface shimmered invitingly, reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. As they approached, the ship's hatch slid open, revealing Naira standing inside. Her large, luminous eyes met theirs, filled with curiosity and cautious optimism. "Welcome, At," she said softly, her melodic voice resonating in their minds. "Let us begin." Stepping aboard the ship, Jack and Laura felt a mix of awe and apprehension. They didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but one thing was certain. Humanity's fate depended on the conversations that would unfold within these walls. For the first time since the aliens' arrival, hope outweighed fear. Document. Part 1. The sun hung low over the vast expanse of Montana's wilderness, casting long shadows across the dense pine forests and shimmering rivers. It was a quiet morning, the kind that made Jack Miller feel alive. As a park ranger for Glacier National Park, he had grown accustomed to the stillness of nature, the rhythmic chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves in the breeze, and the occasional distant howl of wolves. But today, something felt off. Jack adjusted his hat as he stepped out of his truck near the trailhead. He had been patrolling this area for years, but lately there were strange reports coming in from hikers and locals alike. Deer were acting skittish, darting into open fields at odd hours. Wolves, usually nocturnal, had been spotted roaming during the day. Even the insects seemed different, swarms behaving erratically, buzzing in patterns no one could explain. First, Jack dismissed it as seasonal changes or maybe just paranoia spreading among visitors. But now, standing here, under the golden light of dawn, he couldn't shake the feeling that something unusual was happening. He grabbed his binoculars from the passenger seat and slung his backpack over his shoulder. His boots crunched against the gravel path as he started down the trail. The air smelled fresh, tinged with the earthy scent of pine needles and damp soil. Yet even the forest itself seemed quieter than usual. No birdsong greeted him this time, just an unsettling silence. About halfway along the trail, Jack paused. Something caught his eye. Flicker of movement high up in the trees. Binoculars, scanning the branches. Whatever it was, it vanished before he could get a good look. Lowering the binoculars, he frowned. Birds didn't move like that, not around here anyway. Their flight patterns were predictable, graceful. This had been quick, almost mechanical, probably nothing. Jack muttered to himself, though the words sounded hollow even to him. Still, curiosity got the better of him. He veered off the main trail, pushing through thick underbrush until he reached the base of the tree where he'd seen the movement. Up close, the trunk looked normal enough, gnarled and weathered by time, but then he noticed something odd. Embedded in the bark, a small metallic object shaped like a beetle. Its surface gleamed faintly in the sunlight, completely out of place. Among the natural surroundings, Jack crouched down, reaching out cautiously to touch it. Before his fingers made contact, the thing twitched. Startled, he jerked his hand back. The beetle unfolded tiny wings and lifted off the tree, hovering silently in front of him. Jack's heart raced as he stared at it. It wasn't a libet. At least not in any sense he understood. Its body was sleek and polished, its movements unnaturally precise. And those wings. They weren't made of tissue or membrane, but some sort of reflective material that shimmered like liquid metal. "What the hell?" Jack whispered, taking a step backward. The drone, or whatever it was, didn't seem hostile. It simply hovered, there rotating slowly as if studying him. Then, without warning, it darted upward, disappearing into the canopy above. For a moment, Jack stood frozen, trying to process what he'd just seen. Was it some kind of advanced surveillance device? If so, who or what had sent it? Shaking his head, he pulled out his phone to snap a picture of the spot where the object had been attached to the tree. But when he checked the camera roll later, all he found was a blur of green leaves and sky. Frustrated, he shoved the phone back into his pocket and continued deeper into the woods. By late afternoon, Jack decided to check on one of the remote observation posts near the edge of the park. These stations were equipped with cameras and sensors designed to monitor wildlife activity, though lately the data had been spotty at best. When he arrived, he found the equipment vandalized, wires torn loose, lenses shattered, and the solar panels cracked beyond repair. Someone or something had deliberately sabotaged the setup. As Jack knelt beside the damaged gear, he heard a sound behind him, a soft crunch, like footsteps on dry leaves. He spun around, heart pounding, but saw nothing. Only the endless rows of trees stretching toward the horizon. "You're losing it." "Miller," he muttered aloud, forcing a nervous laugh. But deep down he knew better. Something was out there. Watching, waiting. Meanwhile, miles away in a bustling university lab, marine biologist Laura Bennett was reviewing samples collected from the Pacific coastline. She sat hunched over her microscope, peering intently at slides of fish tissue. her brow furrowed as she noticed peculiar markings on several specimens, thin, circular scars lining their bodies. They weren't bite marks or signs of disease. In fact, she'd never seen anything quite like them before. Laura leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Over the past few weeks, fishermen had reported similar anomalies in their catches. Some claimed the fish acted strangely, too darting, erratically, or refusing to bite hooks altogether. Initially, Laura thought it might be related to pollution or changing ocean temperatures. But these scars told a different story. Whatever caused them wasn't natural. She glanced at the clock on the wall. It was getting late, and the lab was nearly empty, except for a janitor mopping the floor nearby. Sighing, Laura packed up her notes and headed home. On the drive back, her mind kept drifting to the mysterious marks. What could leave such precise, uniform scars on living creatures? The question nagged at her, refusing to let go. When she finally pulled into her driveway, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an old friend, Jack Miller. The two had met years ago during a joint conservation project and stayed in touch ever since. His message was brief. Asterisk, something weird's going on out here. Call me when you can. Asterisk, Laura hesitated for a moment, then dialed his number. After a few rings, Jack picked up. His voice sounded tense, almost frantic. Hey, Laura, you won't believe what I've been seeing out in the park, he began, launching into a detailed account of the strange events, the erratic animal behavior, the mysterious drone-like object, the destroyed observation post. By the time he finished, Laura's pulse was racing. That's insane, she said, gripping the steering wheel tightly. I've been noticing weird stuff too. Fish with these bizarre scars, acting totally out of character. There was a pause on the other end of the line. You think it's connected? Jack asked. I don't know, Laura admitted. It's worth looking into. Maybe we should compare notes tomorrow, agreed, Jack replied. And Laura, be careful out there. I have a bad feeling about this. After hanging up, Laura stared out the car window at the darkening sky. For the first time in a long while, she felt uneasy. Something big was happening, something far beyond her understanding. And she couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that whatever it wasn't entirely human. Document. Part 2, the next morning, Laura arrived at the small cafe where she and Jack had agreed to meet. The place was tucked away in a quiet corner of town, far from the usual tourist spots. She ordered a coffee and took a seat by the window, drumming her fingers nervously on the table as she waited. Outside, the streets were alive with the hum of everyday life cars passing by. People walking their dogs, children laughing as they headed to school. It all seemed so normal, so ordinary. But Laura couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was lurking just beneath the surface. Jack showed up a few minutes later, looking tired but alert. His face was shadowed with stubble, and his usual ranger uniform had been replaced with a simple flannel shirt and jeans. He slid into the seat across from her and set down a folder stuffed with papers and photographs. Thanks for coming, he said, running a hand through his messy hair. I didn't know who else to talk to about this. Laura nodded, gesturing toward the folder. Is that everything you've found so far? Yeah. Jack opened it and spread out the contents on the table. There were grainy photos of the metallic beetle-like object he'd encountered in the forest, sketches of damaged observation equipment, and notes detailing the strange animal behavior he'd witnessed. Take a look at this one, he said, pointing to a photo of a wolf pack standing unnaturally still in broad daylight. They're not supposed to be active right now. Wolves are nocturnal hunters, but lately they've been roaming around. Like it's nothing? Laura leaned closer, studying the image. The wolves did look odd, not aggressive or frightened, but eerily calm, almost as if they were waiting for something. Do you think whatever's causing this is affecting marine life too? She asked, pulling out her own notes. She flipped through pages filled with diagrams of fish tissue and descriptions of the peculiar scars she'd observed. I've been seeing these marks on multiple species. They're too precise to be random. It's like something's deliberately targeting them. Jack frowned, picking up one of her sketches. You said these scars weren't caused by predators or disease, right? So what could do this? Some kind of new tech? I don't know, Laura admitted. but I'm starting to wonder if we're dealing with something bigger than us, something we can't explain." Before Jack could respond, the waitress approached with their coffees. Both fell silent as she set the cups down and walked away. Once they were alone again, Jack lowered his voice. "There's more," he said, glancing around to make sure. No one was listening. "Yesterday, after I called you, I went back to check another observation post. That's when I saw a massive ship hovering above the trees. It was huge, Laura. Bigger than anything I've ever seen. And it wasn't making a sound." Laura's eyes widened. "A ship? You mean like an alien ship?" Jack shrugged helplessly. "I don't have any other explanation. It looked like some kind of spacecraft, glowing faintly against the clouds. Then it just disappeared, like it vanished into thin air." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The idea of extraterrestrial visitors felt absurd, impossible even. Yet neither Jack nor Laura could deny the evidence piling up before them. Strange objects, the altered wildlife, the unexplainable phenomena. It all pointed to one conclusion. Earth wasn't alone anymore. Later that afternoon, Laura returned to her lab determined to dig deeper. She spent hours poring over data, cross-referencing her findings with reports from other researchers around the world. To her surprise, similar anomalies had been documented in ecosystems everywhere, from the Amazon rainforest to the Arctic tundra. Animals were behaving erratically, plants were growing faster than usual, and even microorganisms were mutating at an alarming rate. Whatever was happening, it wasn't confined to Montana or the Pacific Ocean. It was global, as night fell. Laura decided to take a break. She stepped outside, breathing in the cool evening air. The sky was clear, dotted with stars that twinkled faintly in the darkness. For a brief moment, she felt a sense of peace. Then she noticed something moving overhead, a faint blur streaking across the heavens. First she thought it might be a satellite or a meteor, but as it drew closer, she realized it was far too large, and far too silent to be either. Her heart skipped a beat as the object descended slowly, revealing itself to be a sleek silver craft, unlike anything she'd ever imagined. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the light of the moon. Laura stood frozen, unable to tear her gaze away. The ship hovered silently for several seconds before shooting upward again, disappearing into the night sky as quickly as it had appeared when it was gone. Laura exhaled sharply, realizing she'd been holding her breath. Her mind raced with questions. Had anyone else seen it? Was it connected to the changes in wildlife? Most importantly, why were they here? The following day, Jack drove back to the park, hoping to find more clues. He brought along a handheld recorder and a camera, determined to document everything he encountered. As he ventured deeper into the forest, he began noticing subtle signs of disturbance: broken branches, flattened patches of grass, and faint scorch marks on tree trunks. It was as if something heavy and powerful had moved through the area recently. He stopped near a clearing where he'd previously spotted the wolf pack. This time, however, there was no sign of them. Instead, he found a series of strange symbols etched into the ground, forming a perfect circle about 10 feet wide. The markings were shallow but precise, resembling ancient runes or mathematical equations. Jack knelt down to examine them more closely, snapping photos as he went. Suddenly, a soft worry sound filled the air. Jack spun around, his pulse quickening. Hovering just above the treetops was one of the metallic drones he'd seen before. Unlike last time, though, it didn't flee when he approached. Instead, it projected a holographic image directly in front of him. The image showed various animals: wolves, bears, birds, and even insects, each surrounded by glowing red outlines. Beneath each creature was a series of symbols Jack couldn't decipher. "What does that mean?" he muttered aloud, reaching for his camera. The drone tilted slightly as if acknowledging his presence, then emitted a series of high-pitched tones. Jack winced, covering his ears instinctively. When the noise stopped, the hologram shifted, showing an image of Earth encircled by warning signs. Jack's stomach churned. Whatever these beings were, they clearly viewed Earth's wildlife as a threat, or perhaps as something else entirely. He backed away slowly, keeping his eyes locked on the drone, until it finally zipped off into the distance. That evening, Jack met up with Laura once more. They gathered at her apartment, spreading out their notes and comparing observations. Between Jack's encounter with the drone and Laura's sighting of the ship, they had enough evidence to suggest that intelligent extraterrestrial life was responsible for the changes occurring on Earth. But what do they want? Laura asked, pacing back and forth. If they're studying us, why haven't they tried to communicate directly? Maybe they're scared of us, Jack offered. Or maybe they don't see us as equals yet. Laura shook her head. More than that. Think about it. They're labeling our animals as weapons. Why would they do that unless they saw them as dangerous? Because they are dangerous, Jack replied grimly. At least to someone unfamiliar with how ecosystems work. A jellyfish sting paralyzes its prey. A snake's venom kills instantly. Even honeybee stings can trigger allergic reactions. From their perspective, those traits might look like biological warfare. Laura sank onto the couch, rubbing her temples. So what do we do now? Go public with this. Try to warn people. Risk causing mass panic? Jack countered. We don't even know if they're hostile. For all we know, they're just gathering information. Then we need to figure out how to talk to them, Laura said firmly. If they're watching us, maybe they'll give us a chance to explain ourselves. Jack hesitated, staring at the photos of the symbols etched into the ground. Let's hope you're right, he said quietly. Because if we don't get answers soon, things could get a lot worse. Document Part 3. The next morning, Jack and Laura decided to act. They knew they couldn't ignore what was happening any longer. Whatever these beings were, they had already made their presence known through the drones, the symbols, and the strange behavior of Earth's wildlife. The question now was whether humanity could reach out to them before it was too late. Jack suggested returning to the clearing where he'd encountered the drone. If they're watching us, he said, that place might be important. Maybe it's some kind of meeting point, Laura agreed. She packed a bag with essentials: a flashlight, a notebook, a small recording device, and a camera. They also brought along a white sheet and some markers, hoping to use it as a way to communicate visually, if needed. Neither of them knew exactly what to expect, but they were determined to try. When they arrived at the clearing, the air felt charged, like static electricity prickling against their skin. The symbols etched into the ground were still there, untouched. Since Jack's last visit, Laura knelt beside them, tracing the grooves with her fingers. These look deliberate, she murmured. Like they're trying to send a message, or warn us, Jack added grimly. He glanced around, half expecting another drone to appear. For several minutes, they waited in silence, listening to the rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds. Nothing happened. Finally, Laura stood up and unfolded the white sheet. She used the markers to draw simple pictures: a human figure, an animal, and a tree. Beneath each image, she wrote the word in English. It wasn't much, but it was a start. If the beings understood visual communication, maybe this would get their attention. As soon as she finished, a low hum filled the air. Jack and Laura exchanged nervous glances as the metallic drone descended from above, hovering just a few feet away. This time, it didn't project holograms or emit high-pitched tones. Instead, it extended a thin, glowing appendage that pointed directly at the sheet. Do you think it understands? Laura whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know, Jack replied. But it's reacting. The drone floated closer, scanning the drawings carefully. Then, without warning, it emitted a soft pulse of light. The sheet shimmered briefly, and when the light faded, the words beneath the images had changed. The English text was gone, replaced by unfamiliar symbols that glowed faintly. What did it do? Jack asked, stepping forward cautiously. It translated it? Laura guessed, her eyes wide with amazement. Maybe those are their words for human, animal, in tree. Before they could process what had happened, the drone zipped upward, disappearing into the sky. Moments later, a shadow passed over the clearing. Jack and Laura looked up to see the massive silver ship descending once again. It hovered silently above the trees, its surface reflecting the sunlight. Like a mirror, Laura grabbed Jack's arm instinctively. "What do we do now?" "We wait," Jack said, though his voice betrayed a hint of uncertainty. If they wanted to hurt us, they would have done it already. The ship remained motionless for what felt like an eternity. Then a beam of light shot down from its underside, illuminating a patch of ground near the edge of the clearing. A sleek, oval-shaped platform materialized within the light, hovering a few inches off the ground. Standing on it were two figures tall, slender beings with smooth, translucent skin that shimmered faintly. Their large, almond-shaped eyes glowed softly, and their movements were fluid, almost hypnotic. Jack and Laura froze, unsure whether to approach or retreat. One of the beings raised a hand, palm outward, in a gesture that seemed meant to reassure them. Slowly, tentatively, Jack took a step forward. Laura followed close behind. "Hello?" Jack called out, his voice steady despite the knot of fear in his stomach. "We're not here to harm you." The beings tilted their heads slightly, as if studying him. Then one of them spoke not with words, but with a series of melodic tones that resonated in Jack and Laura's minds. The sound was soothing, yet alien, carrying emotions rather than specific meanings. Somehow, Jack and Laura understood the gist of it. "We mean no harm." Laura swallowed hard, trying to calm her racing heart. "We're humans," she said, pointing to herself and Jack. "We live here, on this planet." The beings exchanged a glance, then gestured toward the ship. A second platform appeared beside the first, inviting Jack and Laura to step aboard. They hesitated, glancing at each other. "Should we go?" Laura whispered. Jack nodded slowly. "If we want answers, this might be our only chance." A deep breath, they stepped onto the platform. As soon as they did, the ship emitted a soft hum, and the platforms ascended smoothly, carrying them upward into the vessel. The interior was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Walls of flowing light, surfaces that shifted and changed color, and an atmosphere that felt both weightless and alive. One of the beings led them to a circular chamber filled with floating holograms. Images of Earth's animals flickered all around them: wolves, sharks, bees, snakes, and countless others. Each creature was surrounded by glowing outlines and accompanied by streams of data written in the same symbols they'd seen. Earlier, they're showing us their research, Laura realized, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. She pointed to one of the holograms, which displayed a jellyfish. They must have analyzed its venom. Jack frowned, studying another image of a honeybee and its stinger. Look, at least half of these creatures have traits they consider dangerous. The beings gestured toward the holograms, then toward Jack and Laura, as if asking for clarification. Laura stepped forward, gesturing to herself and Jack. "We understand why you think these animals are dangerous," she said slowly. "But they're part of our world. They help keep things balanced." The beings tilted their heads again, as if processing her words. Then one of them activated a new hologram, a map of Earth, surrounded by red warning symbols. "Clear. This planet is a threat." "No," Jack interjected firmly. "Not all of it. Yes, some animals can be dangerous, but most aren't. And humans were working to protect them, to take care of the planet." The beings exchanged another glance, their expressions unreadable. One of them reached out, touching a panel on the wall. The holograms shifted, displaying scenes of deforestation, pollution, and climate change. Jack and Laura winced, recognizing humanity's darker side. "We're not perfect," Laura admitted, "but we're learning. We're trying to fix our mistakes." For a long moment, the beings simply observed them, their glowing eyes unblinking. Then, with a final melodic tone, they turned and gestured toward the exit. The platforms reappeared, lowering Jack and Laura back to the ground outside the ship as the vessel ascended into the sky. Jack and Laura stood in stunned silence, watching it disappear. They didn't know what the encounter meant or what the beings planned to do next. But one thing was certain: they had been given a chance to make their case. Later that night, back at Laura's apartment, they tried to piece together everything they'd learned. Jack paced the room, replaying the events in his mind. "They're not hostile," he said finally. "At least not yet. But they're worried about us and about our animals. And they're right to be, Laura added. Some of Earth's creatures really are dangerous if you don't understand them. But they're also incredible, beautiful, essential. Jack stopped pacing and looked at her. So how do we convince them of that? How do we prove we're worth trusting? Laura thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. By showing them. By proving that we're capable of protecting this planet and everything on it. It was a daunting task, but Jack knew she was right. If humanity wanted to earn the trust of these mysterious visitors, they would have to work together. Fast, because one thing was clear, the clock was ticking. Document. Part 4, the next morning. Jack and Laura sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by scattered notes, photographs, and sketches. The events of the previous day felt surreal, like a dream that refused to fade. They had been inside an alien spacecraft, spoken with extraterrestrial beings, and seen firsthand how Earth's wildlife was being viewed as dangerous. Now, they faced the daunting challenge of figuring out what to do next. We need to share this, Laura said finally, breaking the silence. People deserve to know. Jack frowned, leaning back in his chair, and risked causing panic. Saw those symbols they labeled Earth as a threat? If word gets out about that, people will freak out. Maybe, Laura admitted. But keeping it secret isn't helping anyone either. If these aliens decide we're too risky, they could take drastic measures. We have to show them and everyone else that we're trying to protect our planet. Jack sighed, rubbing his temples. He knew she was right, but the thought of going public terrified him. What if people didn't believe them? Or worse, what? If governments decided to retaliate against the aliens instead of negotiating? I think we should start small, he suggested after a moment. Find someone who can help us spread the word without causing chaos. Laura nodded slowly, like a journalist. Exactly. Jack pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. After a few seconds, he found the name he was looking for. Sam Carter. Sam was a freelance reporter known for covering environmental issues. Wasn't tied to any major news outlet, which meant he might be willing to approach the story carefully. Sam's good, Jack explained. He digs deep, but he doesn't sensationalize things. If anyone can handle this responsibly, it's him, Laura agreed, and Jack sent Sam a quick text asking if they could meet later that day. Within minutes, Sam replied, curious but cautious. This better be good, his message read. I've got deadlines. That afternoon, they met at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Sam arrived wearing a leather jacket and carrying a worn notebook. His sharp eyes scanned the room as he slid into the booth across from Jack and Laura. So, what's so important? Sam asked, pulling out a pen. You sounded pretty serious in your text. Jack hesitated, unsure where to begin. Laura jumped. In explaining their recent discoveries, the strange behavior of animals, the metallic drones, and their encounter with the alien beings. At first, Sam listened skeptically, raising an eyebrow every time they mentioned something particularly unbelievable. But as they showed him the photos and described the ship in detail, his expression shifted from doubt to fascination. You're telling me you went aboard an alien spacecraft? Sam asked, his voice low. They showed you holograms of Earth's animals? That's right, Jack confirmed. They're studying us sand, not just humans. They see our wildlife as weapons because of traits like venom or stingers. To them, it's all dangerous. Sam leaned back in his seat, tapping his pen against the table. This is insane. Do you realize what this means? If people find out, it'll change everything. That's why we need your help, Laura said. Earnestly. We want to tell the truth, but we don't want to cause panic. These beings aren't hostile, at least. Not yet. But they're worried about us. If we can show them that we care about protecting our planet, maybe we can earn their trust. Sam nodded slowly, processing the weight of what they were asking. All right, he said after a long pause. I'll help you, but we'll have to be smart about this. Start small, build credibility, and let people come to their own conclusions. Over the next few days, Sam worked closely with Jack and Laura to document their story. He interviewed them extensively, recorded their accounts, and reviewed all the evidence they had gathered. Together, they crafted a narrative that balanced scientific observation with personal experience, aiming to present the information in a way that felt grounded and believable. When the article was ready, Sam published it on his blog, accompanied by photos of the symbols etched into the ground and sketches of the alien ship. The headline read, "Asterisk, are we being watched? Strange encounters suggest extraterrestrial interest in Earth's wildlife." Asterisk, within hours, the post went viral. People around the world began sharing it, debating its authenticity and speculating about the implications. Some dismissed it as fiction, while others claimed it proved long-held conspiracy theories. But amid the noise, there were also voices of reasoned scientists, conservationists, ordinary citizens who recognized the importance of understanding humanity's role in the universe. As the days passed, Jack and Laura monitored the reactions closely. Governments issued vague statements, neither confirming nor denying the claims. Military forces increased patrols near reported sightings of the alien ship, though no direct confrontations occurred. Meanwhile, environmental groups seized the opportunity to highlight the fragility of Earth's ecosystems, urging people to take action before it was too late. Despite the growing attention, Jack and Laura remained cautious. They knew the aliens were still watching, observing humanity's response to the revelation. Every decision mattered now, just for their survival, but for the future of the planet. One evening, as they walked along the outskirts of Glacier National Park, Laura stopped abruptly. She pointed toward the sky, where a faint glow was. Visible above the treetops, it was the ship again, hovering silently in the distance. "They're here," she whispered, her voice filled with awe and apprehension. Jack nodded, gripping his camera tightly. "Let's go. Maybe they want to talk again." They hurried toward the clearing, their footsteps crunching against the dry leaves. When they arrived, the ship descended slowly, casting a soft light over the area. The same two beings emerged, stepping onto the floating platform as before. This time, however, they brought something with them, a glowing orb that pulsed gently in their hands. One of the beings extended the orb toward Jack and Laura, gesturing for them to take it. Hesitantly, Laura reached out and accepted it. As soon as her fingers touched the surface, images flooded her mind, vivid scenes of Earth's wildlife thriving in harmony with nature. There were wolves hunting together, bees pollinating flowers, and even jellyfish drifting peacefully through the ocean. But interspersed among these moments were glimpses of destruction. Forests burning, oceans choked with plastic, and animals suffering due to human negligence. "It's a message," Laura realized, tears welling up in her eyes. "They're showing us what could be possible if we choose to protect our world." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, his own emotions raw. "They're giving us a choice," he said quietly. "To prove we're capable of change or face the consequences." The beings watched them intently, their glowing eyes reflecting both hope and uncertainty. Then, without another sound, they returned to the ship, which ascended gracefully into the night sky as the light faded. Jack and Laura stood in silence, holding the orb between them. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, convincing humanity. To unite under a common purpose was a monumental task. But for the first time, they felt a glimmer of optimism. The aliens hadn't abandoned them. Instead, they had offered a chance to rewrite the story of Earth's future. "We'll make them proud," Laura said softly, clutching the orb tightly. "For ourselves and for every living thing on this planet?" Jack nodded, determination hardening in his gaze. "Let's get to work." Document Part 5. The days following the aliens' latest visit were a whirlwind of activity for Jack, Laura, and Sam. The glowing orb had become their anchor, a symbol of hope and responsibility. It pulsed softly in Laura's hands whenever. They discussed their next steps, as if reminding them of the weight of their mission. They knew they couldn't tackle this alone. Humanity's fate depended on collective action. Sam had been working tirelessly to amplify their message. His article had sparked global interest, but he understood that words alone weren't enough. People needed tangible proof, And more importantly, they needed leaders willing to guide them toward meaningful change. To that end, Sam reached out. Two influential figures across various fields, scientists, activists, politicians, and even celebrities who cared about the environment. He explained the situation carefully, sharing details of Jack and Laura's encounters, while emphasizing the urgency of the aliens' warning. Some dismissed him outright, calling the story a hoax or an elaborate publicity stunt, but others listened truly. Don began asking questions. A renowned marine biologist named Dr. Emily Grant was among the first to step forward. She had read Sam's article and immediately recognized the parallels between the aliens' observations and her own. Research on coral reefs. If these beings are studying Earth's ecosystems, she told Laura during a video call, then we need to show them we're capable of protecting what's left, inspired by Dr. Grant's enthusiasm. Laura and Jack decided to organize a gathering of minds who could help shape humanity's response. They chose a quiet conference center nestled in the mountains, far from prying eyes and media scrutiny. Over the course of a weekend, experts from around the world convened to discuss strategies for environmental restoration, sustainable practices, and ways to communicate with the aliens. The discussions were intense but productive. Ideas flowed freely, ranging from large-scale initiatives like reforestation projects and ocean cleanup efforts to smaller community-based actions, such as urban gardening and wildlife conservation programs. Everyone agreed that transparency was key. If humanity wanted to earn the trust of the extraterrestrial visitors, they had to demonstrate genuine commitment. But not everyone shared their optimism. During one session, a skeptical politician named Richard Hayes voiced his concerns. "Let's say we do all this," he said, gesturing toward the whiteboard covered in notes. "How do we know it'll make any difference? These beings might not care about our efforts. What if they've already made up their minds?" His words cast a shadow over the room, but Laura stood up to address the group. "We don't know what they've decided," she admitted. "We owe it to ourselves and to every living creature on this planet to try. If we give up now, then we've already failed." Her speech resonated deeply with those present, reigniting their determination. By the end of the weekend, they had drafted a comprehensive plan outlining both immediate and long-term goals. They called it the Earth Accord, pledged to prioritize ecological health above all else. Meanwhile, strange occurrences continued to unfold worldwide. Reports poured in of unusual animal behavior, schools of fish forming perfect geometric patterns, birds migrating off schedule, and even insects creating intricate formations in fields. Some interpreted these events as signs of impending doom, while others saw them as messages from the aliens, urging humanity to act quickly. Jack spent most of his time monitoring these developments, documenting changes in Glacier National Park. One evening, as he patrolled the forest, he noticed something extraordinary. A herd of elk standing motionless in a meadow, their antlers illuminated by a faint, otherworldly glow. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but as he approached cautiously, he realized the glow came from tiny metallic drones hovering silently above the animals.
Oh, the drones didn't seem threatening. Instead, they appeared to be scanning
the elk. Recording data, much like scientists would, Jack raised his camera and snapped several photos before retreating quietly. When he returned to the ranger station, he sent the images to Laura, who forwarded them to Dr. Grant for analysis. "This is incredible," Dr. Grant replied via email. "It looks like they're cataloging species, not just observing, but actively studying them. Maybe they're trying to understand how each organism fits into the bigger picture." Laura stared at her computer screen, deep in thought. "Or maybe they're deciding which ones pose the biggest threat," she murmured. To herself, the idea unsettled her, but she pushed the thought aside. For now, their focus had to remain on proving humanity's potential for positive change. Back in town, Sam worked to keep the public engaged without inciting panic. He wrote follow-up articles highlighting grassroots efforts inspired by the Earth Accord. Stories of communities planting trees, cleaning rivers, and protecting endangered species began appearing online, spreading a sense of unity and purpose. Even skeptics found themselves drawn to the movement, moved by the sheer determination of ordinary people stepping up to protect their home. However, not everyone welcomed the shift. Powerful corporations with vested interests in fossil fuels and industrial expansion lobbied hard against the initiative, claiming it would harm economies and lead to job losses. Their campaigns gained traction in certain circles, sowing seeds of doubt and division. Protesters clashed with supporters of the Earth Accord, turning streets into battlegrounds of ideology. Amid the chaos, Jack and Laura remained steadfast. They traveled to cities and towns, speaking at rallies and town hall meetings to rally support. Their authenticity struck a chord with audiences. Here were two ordinary individuals thrust into an extraordinary situation, fighting not for fame or fortune but for the survival of their planet. One night, after a particularly grueling day of speeches and debates, Laura sat on the edge of her hotel bed, staring at the glowing orb. It pulsed steadily, its rhythm almost soothing.
Do you
"Think we're doing enough?" she asked Jack, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor, scrolling through news updates on his phone. "We're doing what we can," he replied, setting the device aside. "And if we keep pushing, others will join us."
Oh.
That's how movements grow. Laura nodded, though uncertainty lingered in her expression. What if it's not enough? What if they decide to leave or worse? Jack leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Then we'll have no regrets. We gave it everything we had. And maybe, just maybe, that'll be enough to convince them we're worth saving. Unbeknownst to them, the aliens were watching closely. High above Earth's atmosphere, aboard their massive ship, Keller, the leader of the Valith Zoologists, reviewed the latest data collected by their drones. His expression was unreadable, his translucent skin shimmering faintly under the ship's artificial light. Beside him stood Naira, the younger scientist who often challenged his conclusions. "These humans are unpredictable," Keller said finally, his melodic voice carrying a note of frustration. "Their actions lack consistency. One moment they destroy, the next they heal. How can we trust such volatile beings?" Naira tilted her head thoughtfully. "Perhaps volatility is part of their nature. Does that make them inherently dangerous, or simply complex?" Keller turned to her sharply. "Complexity does not excuse recklessness. Look at their history wars, pollution, extinction. They've proven themselves incapable of coexistence. But look at their present," Naira countered. "They're trying to change. Isn't that worth considering?" Keller hesitated, his gaze drifting toward a holographic display showing scenes of human activity, volunteers planting saplings, children releasing rehabilitated birds into the wild, and crowds chanting slogans of unity. For a moment, he seemed conflicted. Then he straightened, his resolve hardening once more. "Change takes time," he said coldly. "Time we may not have. Prepare the final report. I will present it to the council tomorrow." Nira watched him leave, her heart heavy with unease. She believed in the potential she'd seen in Jack and Larez, their compassion, but convincing Kelleran the rest of the council wouldn't be easy. She stared at the holograms. A single thought echoed in her mind. There must be another way. Later that night, Naira accessed the restricted archives, searching for evidence that might sway the council's decision. Buried within the data was footage of Earth's beauty rainforests teeming with life. Oceans glittering under sunlight, and vast plains stretching endlessly toward horizons painted in hues of gold and crimson. These images reminded her of why they had come here in the first place, to study, to learn, and perhaps to connect. As she saved the files onto a portable drive, Naira made a silent vow. No matter what happened during the council meeting, she would find a way to ensure humanity's. The voice was heard. Because deep down, she knew that Earth wasn't just a planet filled with danger, it was a world brimming with possibility.